Good morning. I start with that greeting, even though I know that some of you will listen in the afternoon and some will listen in the evening. But I'm thankful that you tune in whenever you tune in, whether it's today or tomorrow or a week from now or whatever. Thanks again for tuning in. Tomorrow morning I will be on a little bit early. I've got an appointment I need to take off. I need to be on the road before 9 o'clock, so I'll be on a little bit earlier tomorrow, but you'll be able to listen to me at whatever time is convenient as normal. So today in chapter 19 of Acts, verses 21 through 41, the end of the chapter, we're going to encounter a riot at Ephesus. And Paul and his companions have been here in Ephesus. It said he was there for 2 years, and this is a part of that time yet. Paul has, it says, resolved in the spirit to go to Athens or go to Jerusalem, and he's going to go through Macedonia and Achaia on the way, and after Jerusalem he's going to go to Rome. I mean, he's continuing his journey. I mean, he's been set in place here in Ephesus teaching, converting people to Jesus, just being a good pastor for 2 years in this community and raising up other leaders of the church as well. But he's going to be here in Ephesus for a little while yet. So he sends Timothy and Erastus to Macedonia ahead of him, just to prepare the people, to tell them that Paul is intending to come, and he should be here soon, whatever soon means, a month or 2 months or whichever. But it was during this time, after Timothy and Erastus have left for Macedonia, that there gets to be an uprising in Ephesus, and there's a group of silversmiths, artisans. They're the ones that they make silver coins. They make other things out of silver, but one of their primary staples of business is that they make statues of the goddess Artemis. And it tells us later in this chapter that the goddess Artemis fell from heavens in a statue form. So it's assumed maybe that it was like a meteorite that came, and maybe not very big, but it looked somewhat like the form of a woman. And since it had come from the sky at some point in history, it was the goddess Artemis, and this was they had shrines and temples, and the silversmiths, the artisans, made a good share of their living making statues and selling to the people of this goddess. Anyway, one of the silversmiths, a man named Demetrius, gathered together some of the other silversmiths, and he said to them, this Paul is causing problems, because as more and more people are becoming followers of the way and listening to this new God, this God of the Jews, and this Jesus the Messiah, we're selling fewer statues, and not only that, but our whole trade, our whole business, each and every one of us may fall into the disrepute. The people might start looking down on us because we are selling statues of a false god, because that's what Paul is teaching. That's what these Jewish people are teaching, these followers of the way, is that any god or goddess made with human hands isn't really a god or goddess at all. So, this Paul and his words can have a very negative impact, not only on our business, but on our reputations, on our profession as a whole. They could start running a smear campaign against us, basically, But, and he says, you see and hear that not only here in Ephesus, but in almost the whole of Asia, this Paul has drawn away a considerable number of people, saying that gods made with hands are not gods. So it's not only here in Ephesus, but it's the whole of Asia. And as people are realizing that it isn't just here, that this message of Jesus, the Christ, the Messiah, this God of the Jews is gathering the following of all people all over the whole region. It's not just here. It isn't just in our city, because there were others from other communities too that would look at Ephesus as a god because of what they knew. The Roman gods, the Greek gods, and all of those things were important items that these silversmiths would make and sell. Well, he continues to to say, Demetrius continues to say about Paul and about these others that they are, causing some considerable concern in the community. And so they start chanting, great is Artemis of the Ephesians, great is our goddess Artemis, and the city gets filled with confusion. People start rushing to the theater, to the place where they would gather for a tribunal, a hearing, or it wasn't a temple or a synagogue, but it was a meeting place anyway that they were rushing to, and many of them didn't know why they were going. I think it's kind of that mob mentality. You see a bunch of people going somewhere, and you figure, man, I better get with them and go. It's kind of like some of the protests that we had and continue to have in our world, that a lot of the people that are there really don't know what they're protesting or why, or the ramifications. I think of the oil pipeline protests a few years ago, excuse me, and how these people were protesting the pipelines, and then they're standing there with a sign, "Need money for gas." Well, if you need gas, you must need a pipeline, and just so many people don't understand the ramifications of what they're doing. And so they had stirred up this crowd down there, and they were all gathered together, and just chaos in this place. And finally, they get things to quiet down, and Alexander gets up, and he's going to try to explain about Jesus to these silversmiths and all the rest of the people that are there. However, the people recognize that he's a Jew. And you remember that, Ephesus and much of this area of Asia was, Roman citizens, Greeks, it wasn't all Jewish people there. So they recognized him as a Jew and recognized that he's one of those guys with Paul following Jesus. And so the whole crowd gets stirred up again, and they shout, it says, for 2 hours, great is our God Artemis, and great is Artemis of the Ephesians, and for 2 hours they're just yelling and cheering and chanting, and Alexander can't get a word in, nobody can hear him, and it's just total chaos, and nothing gets done in the midst of chaos, right? When there's so much going on, you just think about your life. When you seem inundated with, you got 50 things to do today, and you start this and that, and nothing gets done until you focus on one thing at a time. There are people that say they can multitask. They can do this and this and this and this all at the same time. The reality is they're not doing a good job of any one of those things. They might be able to do a little bit of all of those things, but until we focus on one thing, not too much really gets done. And so finally the town clerk gets the crowd quieted down and starts speaking to them. It says the town clerk quieted the crowd and said, "Citizens of Ephesus, who is there that doesn't know that the city of Ephesus is the temple people of the temple of Artemis, and that the statue fell from heaven? Since these things can't be denied, you ought to be quiet and do nothing." So, okay, he's saying you can't deny that the statue Artemis, or fell from heaven, but then again, well, why fight this? So if the artisans, if the silversmiths have a gripe, a complaint against Paul and these Jews, they ought to take it to court. The court is a place for that to be decided, the court of law. If therefore Artemis or Demetrius and the artisans have a complaint against anyone, the courts are open, and they're the proconsul. Let them bring their charges there. And if there's anything further you want to know, let it be settled in regular assembly. Why? Because we are in danger of being charged with rioting, causing a commotion, and there is nothing to justify this commotion. So the town clerk has enough common sense to say, we're not going to settle this in a shouting match. We're not going to settle this out here. But the reality is that if these silversmiths, if these artisans have a valid complaint, then they ought to take it to the court of law. He dismissed the assembly and they went on their way. And I imagine that there was a lot of discussion, a lot of ifs, ands, and buts, and well, what ifs that happened and came about because of that. But it comes back down to the doing one thing, focusing on one thing. And as for Christians, I mean, the one thing we focus on is that Jesus is Lord and Savior. And that in Jesus Christ we have forgiveness of sins. God promises us that. Jesus promises us as well that, and Paul writes, if we have been buried to sin in a death like Jesus, we will certainly be resurrected like Jesus, in a life like his as well. And so we focus on that one thing, that Jesus is Lord, that God is God, and that God is in control, and that he blesses us richly every day.